everyone, it's Sammy here from Riverside County Regional Park and Open Space District. Today is day 2 of I Love My Watershed Week. Yesterday's video explored what a watershed is and why it's so important. Today, I have a model of a watershed here, and I'm going to answer what stormwater pollution is and how we directly impact our watershed. We will even explore some simple ways that we can keep our watershed clean and healthy. What exactly is a watershed? Is a watershed a shed where we would store water bottles? Or is it similar to how a snake sheds its skin? Is it how water sheds? Well, it's not really either of those, but they are similar. Here's a picture of a watershed. We can see up here, we have precipitation. That could be snow or rain. And up here, we have our high points. And when that water flows down from a high point all the way down to a low point, we have our watershed. Now, when that water flows down, it's going to go through different tributaries like streams and creeks, and then it's going to flow into a river, and it's going to go all the way down, and in this case, it's going to collect into this larger body of water, the ocean. And all the land in between, the forest, the factory, the houses, the roads, the schools, the buildings, are all part of the watershed. And we all live in a watershed. All right, so let's take a look at this model of the watershed. We have our high points up here. These are the mountains. And we have another high point up here. So this is where our watershed would begin. Then we have everything in between that high point and our low point down here. We're going to call our low point a lake. And all in between, this is a developing new town. We have up here, we have some construction going on. Here's a digger truck, and they're going to be building some apartments because more people are going to move on into this town. That's good news. And then down here, we have a little neighborhood with some homes. And over here, of course, we have our shopping center so people can get their groceries and things they need. Then if we look down here, we have our riparian area or our wetland habitat. We have a little duck pond in here. It's a nice place to go for a walk. And then let's move on this way. We have some roads and some cars driving around. And we can see we have a farmer here. She has some cows, so she has a dairy farm. And then over here, she's growing some crops. She is a busy farmer. And then up here, it looks like we have a factory. Many people in the town can be employed at the factory, so that's good. And again, we have our mountain area where people could go and hike and enjoy nature. We have some animals up here, which is pretty exciting. We have a mountain lion up in the mountains and a wolf howling at the moon up here. So this is an exciting up and coming little town. Let's see what's happening over here. Like I said earlier, we have a new apartment building being developed over here. We have our digger that's been flattening the area out. So there's some loose dirt and sediment all over this area. So we're gonna have our cocoa powder here represent loose dirt. So we have some loose dirt up here where they're doing construction. And now something that happens quite often around shopping centers is we get a lot of litter around our shopping centers. So our rainbow sprinkles here are going to represent litter, like plastic bags and containers and different trash that gets mistakenly thrown out and not put in the trash can. A lot of times we see a lot of litter along the roads, might blow over there. So this town might have a littering problem. All right, they might need to fix that. So that's litter and trash. Now, let's take a look over here. We have some nice homes over here and a family, and they have a very large dog. I don't know why their dog is so large, but it's a large dog. And I knocked him over. All right, and how many of you have pets at home? I have a pet at home. I have a cat. I love my little kitty, and I've grown up with dogs as well. And one thing about having a pet is that you have to clean up after your animals. That's one responsibility you have to take on when you have a pet. And yes, our chocolate sprinkles here represent pet waste. So they haven't really been cleaning up after their big dog. And then some people like to walk their dog down by the riparian area over here. And maybe down here by the harbor, they're walking their dogs. And if we look over here at our farmer, it doesn't look like she has a fence up. So something that happens is sometimes these cows think the grass looks greener on the other side and tastier. So they make their way through the river and to the other side of the farm where they like to graze on the grass over there. And while they do that, they leave their cow droppings. She's got some from her animals here. All right, so we got our animal waste on the farm. Oh, you know, sometimes people like to walk their pets up in the mountains. We got some animal waste here. That's kind of yucky. All right, so let's take a look at these cars on the road. This is a town of race car drivers. And I didn't notice that there was a mechanic in the town, and a lot of people are getting oil leaks. Ooh, let's open up our oil here. So this is gonna represent our oil. So we have some oil on the road. It's not really good. And then we have some oil in the parking lots here, maybe in this driveway right here and right here, and maybe in the parking lot at the factory. And that's not really great. So right now, everything, it is very littered. We have oil on the road, loose dirt, and it hasn't rained in this town for a while. So, you know, everything's just staying in place. It's not great, but at least it's staying in its place. Now, the farmer decided that she wanted her crops to grow really big this year because last year she just didn't get the yield she wanted. So she decided to put some fertilizer on her crops. Now, fertilizer is something you could put in your garden, or farmers will put on their crops to make sure that they grow really big and luscious and they get a big yield. So even sometimes we like to put fertilizer on our lawns. So these people put fertilizer on their lawns here. And you know what, that's fine, except our farmer over here went overboard. She was like, I want the biggest, juiciest corn, and I want it to grow really fast. So she put an abundance or extra amount of fertilizer on her crops. Oh boy. All right, and that makes plants grow, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? All right, and then now the farmer, when her crop started to grow really big, all of a sudden she got a lot more bugs and pests on her crops, and so she decided to put something called pesticide on there. And pesticide, if you don't know, actually kills bugs that will eat your garden. And there's natural ways to do it, and there's chemical ways to do it. The farmer just wanted to knock all those bugs out and use the chemicals. So that's what she put on her crops here. And then the people in the homes over here heard about what the farmer was using, and they wanted to use a little on their lawns. And then there was some that was used in the landscaping along the roads. All right, so we're using lots of pesticide here. Another thing that's happening in this town is that this factory owner here, there he is, you know, he is just letting his waste from the factory flow right into the river. Let's see what that looks like. Oh man, that's all the oils and waste that's used in the factory. And I'm gonna say that's not very good for the water, and the factory owner should probably do something about that. Again, this town has a bit of a littering problem. They need to get their oil leaks fixed in their cars, and they need to learn to pick up after their animals. But it hasn't rained here, so all of these pollutants haven't gone anywhere yet. But what do you think will happen if it rains in this town? Take a minute to think about the way water flows from a higher area to a lower area. Now that we've thought about how water flows from a higher point to a lower point, let's see what happens when it rains in this town. All right, so we got some rain. Remember, we haven't gotten rain in a long time. That's really good for all the plants to get water so they can grow big and tall. Oh man, it's gonna dump down. And just watch what's happening. Let's just take a look at what's happening here. Oh my goodness, our harbor is sinking. I forgot to mention that, you know, when that fertilizer got into the river here, an abundance of plants grew and overgrew, and we got a flood in our area here. That's not very good. When it rains and we get floods, it can be very dangerous to the roads and very problemsome. All right, so now it's still raining, it's dumping down, and by now I think you all will notice a few things going on here. All right, it rained and rained and rained and rained. You might notice now that the water went from up in the mountains and flowed down into our collection point. And this is the area where the town gets their water supply. And did you notice how a lot of those pollutants flowed down and went straight into the water supply? That's probably not very good. It's going to take a lot of work to clean that water. I want to bring your attention to something else. So all along our town, we have these little red, I call them little red hats. They look like hats, but what they actually represent are storm drains. And these storm drains flow directly to the ocean. So you may notice that in our storm drains, we're getting other things other than storm water in there. We're getting lots of litter, some animal waste. I even see a little bit of fertilizer and pesticide in there, and that's not really good. The only thing we want in our storm drains is storm water to go back into the ocean. And now I want to bring your attention to another area in this town here, our wetland habitat. So after that storm has settled, you'll notice that a lot of those pollutants got stopped in our wetland area right here. And that is really good. Our wetlands are a vital and important part of our watershed because they can stop pollutants before they get into our main water source where all of it collects. So we can see here all that animal waste and litter, and I even see some pesticide that got stuck in our wetland habitat, which isn't that great, but at least we could organize a cleanup in our wetland habitat instead of having to clean our drinking water as much on that side. So wetlands are an amazing part of our watershed. I have a picture of an actual wetland area here. This is actually Hidden Valley Nature Wildlife Area. And you can see there's a lot of vegetation or plants that can catch litter or pollutants before it goes into the water. Wetlands are also great areas for water to collect, like sponges. We can get groundwater from wetland habitats, and that's a really good way to collect drinking water as well. So in this watershed model, I demonstrated to you storm water pollution. And that is the pollution that runs into our water when a storm occurs. And as you can see, it pollutes our drinking water, it pollutes the water for the animals and the habitats in the watershed. So what are some ways that the community in this town could have stopped some of this storm water pollution? So now that you've taken a moment to think about some things this community could have done to reduce storm water pollution in their area, let's look a little closer. So up here in our construction zone where they are building new apartments, it might have been a good idea for our construction crew to put some sandbags along the area to stop the dirt from the excess dirt from going down and flowing into the water. It also would have been a good idea to collect that dirt and move it somewhere else where it wasn't going to flow down. And let's look at these homes right here. Now, one very obvious thing these people could have done is picked up after their dog. It's such a simple thing to help keep our watersheds clean, is to pick up after your pets. I know it's not a fun job, but it's a responsibility that comes with having a pet. And same here, anybody in this area that was walking their dogs really should be picking up after their dogs. So let's look at the shopping center where there was a lot of litter. One thing they could have done is use reusable bags. That reduces so much litter. And then everyone in the town should be making sure that their trash ends up in the trash can or they're recycling in the proper recycle bins. So that's a very simple solution, and that's something you could do at home as well. And then these cars with all their oil leaks, that was a pretty obvious solution. We just need to make sure those oil leaks are getting fixed, whether that means going to the mechanic or learning to fix them yourself. And then let's take a look over here at our farm. So one thing our farmer could do, and a very simple solution, is she can fence in her animals. So all she would have to do is build a fence, make sure her cows stay on this side, and that she picks up after her animals here. Another thing our farmer could have done is it would have been smart for her to take a look at the weather ahead of time and made sure there wasn't going to be a storm right before she put fertilizer and pesticide on her lawn. Also, or on her crops. Also, it would have been a good idea to only put the recommended amount on her crops because that excess flowed right into the drinking water. And that's not very good. And then even here we had that overgrowth from the fertilizer. If we wouldn't have gotten that flood if we didn't put too much fertilizer. So I'm going to take that out of there. And now our factory worker over here who is just letting that toxic waste flow right down the river and into the drinking water. there are programs that the owner could apply for to get his waste recycled, and that is really important for business owners to make sure that their waste is getting recycled. So one thing this farmer could have done is used a more natural pesticide than the harsh chemical pesticides that she put on her lawn, and the homeowners over here as well. One thing you could do to find out about more natural pesticides or ways to keep pests out of your gardens is consulting at your local nursery. So thank you for joining me today on day 2 of I Love My Watershed Week. We've learned many solutions to prevent stormwater pollution today and very simple ways to keep our watershed clean. I hope you join us tomorrow for more watershed fun in I Love My Watershed Week. Again, I'm Sammy with Riverside County Regional Park and Open Space District. Thank you for joining me. See you later.